when I was a junior in high school, and I was really, you know, really, I came across this verse that said, if your eye causes you to sin, you should pluck it out. And if your hand causes you sin, you should cut it off. And I don't know about you, but I masturbated with my hand. And so what I would do is every time I would masturbate, I would take a knife and I would cut it across the back of my wrist and draw blood.
Hmm.
And I was like, I'm going to keep, and I'm like, this will stop me. Like if I know I have to do this, like event, like, you know, and so I was like, if my hand comes off, my hand comes up, but like I'm going to do this until I stop. The problem for me growing up was it, the gospel just didn't make sense to me. Like the idea of people
Hmm.
rising from the dead, flying away, Red Seas parting, none of that stuff made any sense to me.
Even as a kid?
No,
Wow.
no, especially as a kid, And so like I, I didn't, I wasn't I didn't want to make trouble. So I didn't run around going, this makes no sense, but I just wasn't into it. I knew my dad believed it. And so I didn't hate Christianity. It just it didn't seem true to me. Um, if that, if that makes any
How many
sense.
people are Christians, but the gospel makes no sense to them? We say we are Christians, the gospel. What is shedding of blood, a man on a cross? What is what does that have to do with anything? Why did that even have to happen that way? I mean, he's God, he could have done it any other way. And yet we know that in this physical body that the life of our flesh is in the blood. And the quality of life that we have is determined by what is happening in that blood. What is going on in that blood? Do we take the time to understand that blood is a life? It's life giving. How much more the blood that was never tainted with anything evil, the blood that was never mixed with anything corrupt, the blood that knew no sickness. How much more that blood that was shed? That's why you see it's a very serious crime in the eyes of God when we trample underfoot that sacrifice that was made. When we turn up our noses at it as though it didn't mean anything, didn't make sense. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, why? The road that was paved for us to go straight to God and not be rejected at the end of our lives. We scorn, we discard it. So it's a filthy rag, we discard it. We say it does not make sense. Do we understand that the devil does not need to go after the people of the world? That's why he's so present in so many churches. Just make sure that that gospel is corrupt. Make sure that people are not being taught the right thing. If you listen to one of Erica Mukisa's testimonies, do you know what she said? This is a former sorceress. She worked hands-on with Satan, the same Satan that we see written about in the Bible, the Holy Scriptures. And she said that there was something called Satanic Bible School that they attended. You think this gospel can't be corrupted? You think it can't be used for foul things after people's own hearts and their own whims? You think it can't be just distorted in any form? They went to Satanic Bible School. Do you think they went to Satanic Bible School just for fun? No. They did that so that they can come plant churches on the earth. Because they need to seek out those who are the children of God. And if you're weak in your faith, if you've been taught the wrong things, you will definitely fall prey to one of these pastors who attended Satanic Bible School and is now leader of a church on this earth, seeking how many souls can be slaughtered. Because the unsuspecting Christian doesn't understand that life is spiritual. That life is not just about flesh and blood that you can see. And that your soul is on the line. You don't understand that your soul is on the line, and this is a ferocious battle between the spiritual realm and the physical realm. It's a spiritual battle going on in that spiritual realm, manifested in this physical realm. And how do we see it manifested? In so many ways. So many people are saying goodbye to Jesus because you didn't cut it, Jesus. Sorry, Jesus, you didn't quite cut it for me. This doesn't make sense to me.
I have a friend named T.H. Lerman. She wrote a book called How God Becomes Real. And she studied, not just in Christianity, but in all sorts of religious and occult practices, what happens when people fast and they pray and they, they do ritualistic dancing and things like that, and how they conjure up experiences that are incredibly real, right? And so,
Mm.
my sort of basic theory is whatever narrative that you're in when you have a transcendent experience, it confirms that narrative. And so,
Yeah,
like, if I'd have had a
absolutely.
transcendent experience when I was on a Muslim pilgrimage, I would be like, Allah is real. Oh my gosh, it's true. And if I'd have had it in a Hindu temple, I'd have been Shiva, but like I had it on a Christian retreat. And man, once that happened, I was in. Then I was really in.
Mm.
Because I was like, I am part of a loving, I'm part of this loving community, this youth group. And all of a sudden, I've got brothers and sisters, and we have a code of behavior, and we know who we are. And like as a young person, you're looking for like, I want to belong, and I want to know what's real. And all of a sudden, I'm like, I belong, and this is real. And I mean, boom, I was in.
Is there any limit for the enemy of your soul when he's coming after you? Is there any limit? And so you have a transcendent move. Something happens, and wow, man, this must be the Spirit of the living God. There's so many churches we see that type of thing happening, and we know if you're a real child of God, you know certain things. It can't be a move of the Holy Spirit. It can't be, because God does not contradict himself. And he's not the author of confusion. Whenever you see something that seems to be contradictory, something is wrong. Something is wrong. Something needs to be ironed out somewhere, because God is not and cannot contradict himself. And your enemy knows how to give you a great experience, whether it's in Hinduism, whether it's in Islam, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Even in the church, he knows how to give you that feel-good experience. He knows how to set you up. If someone is trying to break into your home, at what point do you say, okay, you can come in and just have everything, I don't care? Is there a point where you stop fighting? Is there a point where you decide, I'm not going to call 911, or I'm just going to let this person run amok in my home and take whatever they want? You won't do it for your physical home that's one day no longer going to be your home because you're not going to be on the earth. But for that soul, your soul, you're just going to say, okay, it's all right. Come in, take whatever you want. It doesn't matter to me. Why aren't we so vigorous in our fighting when it comes to our souls as we are when it comes to every other thing on the earth? You would fight for every single physical thing on this earth. But when it comes to your soul, you tell the enemy, oh, whatever. You can have me. You can have my soul. No fight. No fight for your soul. You know why? Because you don't believe. You don't believe that there is a battle on for your soul. You think it's a joke. You think it's a plaything. You think it doesn't matter what people say. These people are cuckoo. You believe these people with this Jesus and this blood? Your own soul you wouldn't fight for. But you'll fight for all the other things that will not even endure. That will not endure. But your soul, you said, oh, it's okay. It's okay. The enemy can have it.
In some sense, I had been groomed. And so like I instantly shot from being a non-Christian to being like a leader in that youth group. I mean, because and it turned out later, my friend Joel told me, he said they sat around at the beginning of that year and they had a conversation about like who would be good to recruit for Christianity, like who would be, they wanted like popular kids, kids who were influencers at the school because they were trying to like build a movement. And he targeted me and befriended me on purpose, because he was like, he was going to love me and care for me and show me his friendship. And then he would bring me into a group of other people and they would love me. And I got surrounded by all these people that are like, Bart, so glad you're here. And, and so, I was set up. And then when I became a youth leader, we targeted, like we looked for kids, and we didn't always look for popular kids. We just looked for kids who were lonely, sad. Like if somebody was, feeling bad about life, outcast kids, like we would, we weren't targeting them because we wanted a big youth group. We were targeting them because we wanted to make their lives better. And we thought, like, that kid's lonely. If we bring him into our youth group, he'll have friends. He'll have purpose. He'll go to heaven. It'll all make sense. And so, I got into evangelism like straight out of the gate because I was evangelized. And then I was brought into the leadership of this group. And the idea was like, listen, we can go to a high school where there's a lot of kids who are really feeling bad, who are going through hard times. And we can transform their lives for the better. Like we have the power. And that's heady stuff. You're 16 years
You know
old.
who else recruits for his kingdom? Satan recruits. He recruits souls in churches, in schools, universities, in workplaces, wherever. He recruits souls. If you're a parent, pray for your children because the devil has students, teachers set up in all of these places where you think your child is going to be educated. You need to pray for your children. Children who don't have parents that love and trust God and believe in God and pray for them are open to so much. There's so much that they will be vulnerable to because they're not covered, right? If you listen to one of the other testimonies that former sorceress that I cover on this channel that she gave, she said sometimes when she went to attack children, she would see them in a pool of blood, or she would see a wall of fire around that child, and she could not interfere. The blood that she would see that child in is the blood of Jesus because that child had praying parents, and that child was covered. So she went to attack that child, but she couldn't do it because that child was covered in prayer. The fire around that child, she couldn't penetrate it because that child was covered in prayer. Imagine if she goes to your house. If she went to your house, would it be easy for her to attack your children? Would it have been, because she's no longer a sorceress, would it have been easy for her to come in and attack your children because you don't believe in God and you don't want to pray for your children? While the people in the spiritual realm, they know what they're about. They know who they're serving. They know the master that they're serving. And you're there saying, oh, there is no God. Or this is nonsense. All of this is foolishness. I don't deny that people have had bad experiences. I don't deny that. But it does not nullify. It does not nullify the Most High God. It does not nullify His goodness. It does not nullify who He is. It does not nullify the fight in the spiritual realm against your soul and against your family. You don't have much time to get it right. This world here, we're running out of time. That precious thing that we think we'll always have called time, it's running low. It's running low. Jesus Christ is coming back, regardless of who believes that. Jesus is not waiting to see, oh, I need to wait for people to believe and then I can come back. Whether you believe or you don't believe, He's coming back. There's going to be a great number of people that will be so terrified when they see Jesus Christ, because they're going to know the lies that they lived on this earth. They're going to know that people warned them time and time again and they did not listen. They refused, they scoffed, they mocked. They didn't want to listen. When they see Him with their eyes, every eye, He formed these eyes, every single eye He created. He said, every eye will see Him and He will come back. When you see Him, what are you going to say? How? You're going to run to Tom Mills? What are you going to tell Him? How is He going to help you? He will be scared for himself. He will be terrified for himself, for his own life. What is He going to do to you, to help you? When you ignored and you scorned that blood, you spent your whole life scorning that blood. What are you going to do then when you see Him? He said every eye will see Him. You think you can make God a liar? You think you're not going to see Him? He says every eye will see. Every eye will see. Nobody will make Him a liar. He said every man will become a liar before God could become a liar. He will never be a liar. You want to listen to the father of lies who tells you that there is no God? Forget about this Christian thing. It is actually the biggest mistake that you could make, because this mistake rings into eternity. It's not just I just had a bad flavor of this ice cream today and I should have chosen that ice cream instead. You can just go get that other ice cream the next day if you want. Oh, I bought a wrong car. I should have bought that car. You could sell that car and get the next car. When your soul hangs on the decision that you're making, you better be sure you get it right. You better be sure that the decision that you're making, you're going to be able to live with that decision for eternity. That is the biggest decision that you can ever make.
Like, the weird thing about Christianity is what a terrible narrative, right? Like Jesus who kills him, got to kill somebody. I can't forgive you unless I kill somebody. Like it's a crazy bloody narrative. And yet that's worked for 3,000 years. It's not because the narrative is so good. It's because the practice and the ritual and the community works. And so I'm like, you don't want to throw all that stuff out the door just because you figure out that, the Book of Enoch, predated, all the stuff that you figured.
That crazy blood narrative is the salvation for the souls of the whole wide world. That crazy blood narrative is the only way of reconciliation between God and man. That crazy blood narrative is eternal life for every human soul who will humble himself. That crazy blood narrative is your only hope for salvation. When you scorn that crazy blood narrative, you scorn your own soul.
Over the course of the summer, I got exposed to all this poverty. And that was both the beginning of my real Christian journey, but it was also the beginning of the end of it. Because that was my first sort of theological crisis where I was like, wait a second. I thought God was good. I thought God was in control. I thought if you were faithful, and I thought the world was somehow just. And, when you see urban poverty, it's just insane stuff that these little kids I was working with was going through. And, and so what happened is that experience cracked my theology. And what happened was because I would meet people who weren't, like people would die in that neighborhood and they would die, they would get shot. Some kid would get shot, right? And he would die and he wasn't a Christian. So of course, by my conservative theology, he was going to go to hell, but he had never had a shot. Like a 16-year-old kid, and I'm like, wait a second. So God's going to burn that guy forever? Because he didn't accept Jesus Christ as his personal Lord and Savior before he got shot in the ghetto? Like, do you know the family he grew up in? He had, what are you talking about? And it was at that point that the reality that I saw in front of me, I had this theology that said that the world worked one way, and then there was reality in front of me. And so I did this funny thing. I didn't realize it was going to be so significant at the time, but I adjusted my theology to match what I was seeing in front of me. And I just tweaked it a little bit. I decided that God wasn't in control of everything that happened. He was only in control of the people that surrendered their will to him. And that's why we had to do work. We had to win more Christians so that more people would do God's will, so that God's will could actually be done on earth. But I decided that everything that was happening wasn't God's will because there was no way that God let that girl get raped. There was no way that God let that kid get shot.
I thought God was good and in control. Are you saying that he's not good and he's not in control? You see, in the same way that rapist used his free will to rape that poor child, you're using your free will also to say there is no God. Should he deprive that rapist of using his free will to rape that poor child, but still give you that freedom to say there is no God? God is just. Here is your portion of free will. Here is your portion of free will. What are you going to use it to do? He's just, There is a day of judgment coming. And that rapist, if that person dies a rapist, woe. Woe unto his soul. Woe unto his soul. But if you also die saying that there is no God, woe also unto your soul. Or there is a day coming of judgment. God sees everything. There is nothing hidden from his eyes. There is a day of judgment coming. Yeah, there are wicked things that happen in this world. Hey, the devil is roaming the earth. Have you not read the book of Job? When he presented himself before God, God asked him, where have you come from? He said, I've come from roaming up and down in the earth. When the devil is roaming up and down in the earth, you think people are not going to get raped and murdered? It's the devil roaming up and down in the earth. You think people are not going to be trafficked? You think people are not going to say, there is no God? The devil is roaming to and fro in the earth like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. The babies, the children, everyone, the adults, it doesn't matter who. You're game for him. For him, there are no boundaries. As long as the soul is involved, takes the opportunity as long as it's there. So yeah, those rapists, if they die in that sin, and I'm not wishing that they would die in that sin, because no one can stand up to God's judgment. No one can stand up to his judgment. We won't wish them to die in that sin. In the same way that we won't wish anyone to die, claiming that there is no God, that they wasted their life and they wasted their time believing in this blood narrative, all because of the wickedness that is happening on this earth. It's a wicked earth, full of wickedness, but it's also full of goodness. Because when you wake up in the morning and you take a breath of air and you look outside and you hear the birds and you see the flowers and you see the rays of the sunlight, you know there is still hope. There is still goodness. Despite all the evil and the darkness and the wickedness, you know that there is still some goodness on this earth. It is not all darkness and wickedness. But there will come a time when God will remove himself completely from the picture for those who say, we don't want anything to do with you. He will remove himself. And in that moment, that's when you will understand fully. Oh, wow. All of this time that I was using his breath to say there is no God, he was loving me by allowing me to breathe. He was loving me by allowing me to see the beautiful things that he's created. He was loving me by giving me a free will. Did not force you to do anything. You made your choice. Everyone makes his choice. But you will have to answer. You will have to answer. It's not a free for all. You do as thou wilt. All right? Do as thou wilt. It's not that. When it comes to God, Yahweh, it's order. It's not do as thou wilt. He gives you your free will. But people need to understand that this is not about us. Life doesn't revolve around me, my, what I want, all that I need. If God, you don't answer my prayer by tomorrow at this time, I'm done with you because you're my genie in the bottle that I rob. And if I don't get an answer, too bad for you, God. Too bad for God? Really? You really think so? Too bad for God. Who created here? You or God? Who is the creator? It could never be too bad when it comes to the creator, though. It could never be too bad. The one that is too bad for is the one who neglects his creator.
When I did get all that like sexual, purity stuff, what I was told is that when I sinned like that, two things happened. Number one is that I cause pain to God, or as one preacher said, we crucify him daily. Like that my sins were the reason that so I didn't want to I like Jesus. I didn't want to make him suffer. So I felt really guilty when I let him down. But the other thing is that it would hamper my ability to be a witness to other people, that I would lose some of the power that I had to be a force for good in the world. And somebody might die as a result of that because I was too weak to help them, because I was too busy looking at my Playboy magazine when I should have been sharing the gospel with them. And so I felt tremendous guilt. So much so that when I was a junior in high school, and I was really, really, I came across this verse that said, if your eye causes you to sin, you should pluck it out. And if your hand causes you sin, you should cut it off. And I don't know about you, but I masturbated with my hand. And so what I would do is every time I would masturbate, I would take a knife and I would cut it across the back of my wrist and draw blood. And I was like, I'm going to keep, and I'm like, this will stop me. Like, if I know I have to do this, and so I was like, if my hand comes off, my hand comes up, but like, I'm going to do this until I stop.
Now you went and took this scripture literally. Is that what God meant? Like, seriously? Do you think that's what he meant? That you would dismember yourself? That you would harm yourself? He was letting us know in a manner of emphasizing how serious sin is, to the extent that, listen, even if your body part causes you to sin, you better know. You better offer out that body part. But when you hear that, you understand, listen, I know that God could not mean that I'm going to hurt myself. So what does he really mean here? He means flee from sin at all costs. At all cost, flee from sin. At all cost. It's not worth it. Don't even let your own body cause you to sin. It's not even worth it at all. Man, if we only see and understand how much he loves us, how much he loves us, but the enemy of our souls wants us to believe that he is so evil and he's so wicked, he's so bad. You can't trust this God. You realize that it's people who used to be in the church that are turning away from God. People who used to be lovers of Christ, so to speak, so they say. We have to take their word for it. These are people who once had an understanding of God. A lot of people have come to God in a way that they've learned so many things that are not even true about God. But the devil is going after souls that once claimed and professed Jesus Christ. He doesn't need to go after his bodies in the world that don't want to have anything to do with God. But the ones that once professed Jesus, you need to go after these souls. And so easily you would readily give your soul up on a platter to the devil. You think he's going to do something good with your soul? Think he has good plans for you? You think he has something good cooking for your soul? Huh? Anyone who worked their life with the devil, they know now that they were deceived. If they've passed on, they now understand how much he deceived them, how he lied to them. They now understand, they now get it. They thought it would be okay because he would reward them in the after life. But now they're realizing he's a liar, father of lies. You expect that there would be truth in him. We have a choice to make while we're on this earth, while we're still breathing. There's coming a time when we will no longer be on this physical earth. People are passing on every day. And many are going into an eternity where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth because they spend their whole lives, or at least part of their lives, because they turn away at some point, saying that there is no God. Don't be deceived. If Satan could get a third of the angels to come along with him, angels who were already in heaven, what do you think he can do to souls who don't even know that the spiritual realm is real? What do you think he can do to people who never saw God? What do you think he can do? You want to fight God and side with the enemy. You think he will win? It's not a good idea. It's not a good idea. Trying to warn souls while there is still time, because time is running out. Your soul is important. Your soul is important to the Most High God. He loves you. For God so loved the world, not hated, loved the world, that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever shall believe in him will have everlasting life. People think that heaven is a boring place. If the earth is packed with so many things, how could heaven be boring? If the wicked fall in dirty, dusty earth, has so many places to go, so many things to learn, so many things to see and do. How could you now come to the conclusion that heaven is going to be boring? There's no such word as boredom in heaven. It doesn't exist. On earth it exists because in spite of all the things we have as options to do, there are people who sit at home and they're bored. They're bored. There is no such thing as boredom in heaven. That word does not exist. That would exist on the earth, but in heaven, there's no such thing. Do your due diligence for your soul. Don't listen to people who are heading to the pits because they're going to take you there with them on a one-way ticket. Do your due diligence. You are worth it, and your soul is worth it. Jesus Christ loves you. That's why he laid down his life. Take your sin upon himself so that you don't have to pay that debt because you can't even pay that debt. Don't trample under your feet the blood that was shed for your life and your soul. Don't trample it under your feet because that is the worst thing that you can do. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. May you think about your soul. And not just listen, but think about your soul seriously. In Jesus' mighty name. Until next time. Thanks for tuning in.